Wow, okay. That's a lot more people tuning in for this than I had anticipated. Oh my goodness. First of all, apologies in advance to my mods because, hold on, adjust that. Because I count this high of people watching probably probably means there's going to be a lot of folks here who are here to express the same sentiments that they express on my other channel, which was part of the reason I was hosting this here as opposed to on the Vera Wild channel, because that one is now obviously kind of in the crosshairs at the moment. So, again, apologies to my mods, and also apologies to anyone in the chat. So, first, let's catch up. Anyone who isn't familiar with what happened and what I'm even talking about. And yes, I am actually in the bath. I am choosing to relax. I feel like after the last 24 hours, I've earned it. Oh, and just let's note this, because I just saw this turn up in the chat. Let's not throw harsh insults either at me or at any of the people I am about to talk about. So no personal attacks, please, even if they're directed at someone else and you think that you're doing it to defend me, please don't. Okay? Let's maintain civil behavior through all this as best we can. Okay? So, oh, in case anyone was scared, some people brought up, no, I didn't actually smash this during the Sonic review. So, yesterday, Blaire White, is that tea? No, I'm not. This is not about spilling tea. I'm trying very hard not to do that. It's pink Moscato is what it is. So, Blaire White, who you may or may not have heard of, she is a transgender pundit. She is conservative. I don't really want to get into a bunch of politics about it. I don't think that's a controversial way to characterize her. I feel like that's fair. I hope it is. So, she put out a video yesterday that heavily featured one of my videos from the Vera Wild channel. Important question, what are you drinking? Pink Moscato. So the video that she featured, and she did, I would call it a takedown. She described it more as a deep dive. I don't want to get bogged down in semantics, but she basically played clips of my video to then offer her disagreeing opinion. The video in question was the one where I talked about being trans while not having dysphoria, which is a position that she not only disagrees with, feels is harmful towards transgender people who do experience dysphoria. And actually her position is that if you don't have dysphoria, then you're not actually trans. Now, I don't actually want to get into a discussion of who's right and who's wrong. I'm not here to rebut what she said. I'm more interested in just sort of processing everything that's going on in the last 24 hours. So, part of the reason I'm doing this is so I don't have to talk about it on Tuesday on the regularly scheduled live stream. I kind of want to cleanse myself. I literally cleanse myself. So, the video featured me in the thumbnail, my face in the thumbnail. And as I said, she wasn't rude or cruel. She did not directly attack me as a person. But it was obviously unkind to the position I was expressing in that video. Now, this was something that was brought to my attention by a number of people, and a couple of interesting things happened. Now, the first thing for me to mention is that this is not my first rodeo. This is not the first time that a YouTuber with a substantially larger following than me has decided to do some sort of takedown or rebuttal of something that I've done. And what's interesting about having had this experience before is I can actually make a fairly direct comparison. So I've talked before, up to this point I'd never said the channel that had done this to me before, largely just because I wasn't trying to start a fight anywhere. It's now been 2 years, so before I say who it is, please, again, don't dogpile. Don't dogpile Blaire and don't dogpile Baring, who was the one who did this to me 2 years ago. That one was in regards to the initial video that I made when Scarlett Johansson was cast to play a trans man, and that ultimately did pan out. She dropped out of the project. It's pretty much fallen apart. But anyways, he featured me. Oh, thank you, Rachel. Love you lots. Stay safe. Thanks so much. So he featured not only my video, he also featured Jackson Bird, because Jackson Bird also made a critical video of that. And he did not dissimilar to Blaire, and actually what these sorts of videos tend to do always, which is to take out specific pieces of the video without the full context, and to either mock or dispute something along the lines for the specific bits that they've chosen to highlight. And that's just kind of a feature of these kinds of videos. So I'm not even going to necessarily say that either he or Blaire were worse, quote unquote. That's just what these kinds of videos are. It's what they do. But here's the thing. That one 2 years ago, which in his case, he did it to a Council of Geeks video. Blaire did it with a Blaire White video. So when Baring did it, for weeks, almost a month, his followers descended on my channel with harassing comments and rudeness to me and my subscribers and other commenters, again, for weeks. And there were tons of them. I had to come up with whole new parameters for what would flag comments so that they would go under auto review, so that I could look at them before they could be seen public. I had to come up with whole new things because they were finding new ways to insult and attack me. Now, at the time that the video was done, Baring had about 20 times the subscriber base that Council of Geeks did. So by comparison to Blaire, who again chose to target a video from Vera Wild, Vera Wild has fewer subscribers than Council of Geeks. And her subscribers outnumber mine by a factor of 75. And despite that, I have had, just raw numbers, way fewer cruel comments that I've had to dig through and get rid of. I have had some. I would like to think more than my share for a 24-hour period. But again, because I can compare it to the last time that this happened to me, this has not been nearly as bad. Plus, also, I have the experience of going through it before behind me, so, I'm not green to it anymore. Now, I don't have any way of knowing this for a certainty, but if I were to guess for the primary reason why I saw much more direct confrontation from Baring subscribers than I'm currently seeing from Blaire, is down to one simple thing. Whew. I drew a very hot bath and I can see I'm sweating. So now this is a combination bath and sauna, apparently. But the key difference was Baring's video, in the description, he included a link to my video and to Jackson's videos that he was citing, which meant that his followers were only one click away from getting to me and being able to harass me. Blaire, by contrast, did not include a link to my video, nor did she tag me on Instagram or Twitter or anywhere else where she promoted the video. Now, I have absolutely no way of knowing whether she did not tag me as a consideration because, of concern that I was going to get dogpiled, or if she didn't do it simply because it would have been more work to include the links. But the practical upshot is the same either way. It meant that anyone who saw her video who wanted to come at me had to do a little bit of legwork. Not a lot. Like, it would not have been very hard, but it would have been more effort than just clicking on a link. And one of the... Oh, hang on. Thank you, Lexi. I have massive dysphoria, but as someone who faces a lot of gatekeeping, I'm appalled when fellow trans people do it to others. Be safe. Thank you, Lexi. Oh, and also thank you, Halo. It's a weird situation for me because I follow you both. Decent number of folks do. Geez, I really am sweating. Should have left the door open. Had a little bit of breeze in here. I can't get out now because the camera's on. Sorry, hold on. Give me 1 second. No! Sorry. Anyways, so the practical upshot, and because I've long operated on the presumption that the human animal is fundamentally lazy. And that's not to say no one ever puts in hard work, but the more work is involved in something, the fewer people are ultimately going to do it because not enough of them care enough to put in the extra work. So because Blaire did not feature a link to my video, it meant that people had to do additional work, which most of them weren't willing to do. And as a result, way less direct harassment this time. That having been said, there's some things about, well, honestly, there's two main things about the video, and this is not about me disagreeing with her position. Because truth be told, I would be more than willing to have a one-on-one conversation with her about that. And I say conversation, not debate, because I'm not looking to get on a platform and argue with her. I would like to have a very honest back and forth where, we try and come to a better understanding of each other. But I'm not about to attack her positions. I am, however, going to point out two things that she did that I feel were either unfair or sufficient thought was not put into the impact of them. So either these things were done consciously, which I would find regrettable, or they were done and then the consequences weren't thought about, which the practical upshot is the same either way, but that does make a slight difference in terms of my assessment of the person who made the video. So the first has to do with the inclusion of my face on the thumbnail and the name of the video. Because the name of the video was I'm Trans for Attention, which honestly, as far as video titles go, is a perfectly fine video title. I do, however, take issue with the fact that she put that in quotes next to my face, which implies that that was a thing that I said, or that it was at the very least a paraphrasing of something that I said. And it was neither. So that's my first problem. My other problem does have to do with the substance of the video a little bit more, at least in terms of how it was presented. Because I was not the only person she talked about. In the same video, she talked about a person who I'm not going to name, but whose name was visible on the images of text that she put up. That person claimed to be trans without dysphoria and made threats towards her, which, first off, let's be very clear, not okay. Absolutely not okay. And she said she went to the police, and I'm glad. She should have. No one should be making bodily harm, threats of bodily harm to anybody for expressing an opinion of this nature. Like, that shouldn't be happening. So I don't have a problem with her calling out that behavior. My issue is that while she never said anything to imply or state that the person who made the threats and me were the same person, and actually if you pay attention, it's clear that it isn't. There's images of this person that are clearly not me, and like I said, the name is visible there, and it's obviously, again, clearly not me. But she never makes the distinction of going, okay, now I'm going to talk about another person. She just transitions from talking about threats to talking about my video, which has resulted in at least one person who came at me very harshly, who did believe that I was the one who issued those threats. So, hold on. Your nose looks sunburned. Did a video in the bath, my subscribers would be, if I did a video in the bath, my subscribers would be screaming into the night. Donna, I doubt that's the case. I've been a follower of yours forever. I love your Doctor Who vids. Blaire's vid felt lazy and like she was trying to hit the 10-minute mark for ad money. I mean, I don't follow her stuff, so I don't know I don't know if that's standard for what she usually does, if compared to other things, if there was less work, but I can't make that call. I don't subscribe to her channel. So coming back to this, oh, sorry. Thank you, Quick Sticks. As a gay man, I'm disgusted by so many other gay, bi, and trans people throwing the rest of the LGBT plus community under the bus for the sake of acceptance. It disheartens me as well, but it can get complicated. Anyways, so the other issue around this whole thing having to do with the way that it was presented. So as I said, she does not clearly indicate that I was not the person who issued the threats. But if you pay attention, it's clear that I wasn't. But even if you know that, even if you watch and you understand that these are two different people she's talking about, the fact that she goes from talking about a trans person who does not have dysphoria, who made threats to her, to then critiquing a video by someone who is talking about being trans without having dysphoria, that implicitly links violent behavior to me and to what I'm talking about and to anyone who identifies similarly. And I have a big problem with that. The fact that there is no context given for why you would put these two images together. So like, if I ever did a video where I went from talking about a speech from Hitler to talking about and then started critiquing a video from a conservative pundit, and I didn't give context or a reason why, I just put those things back to back in the same video, that's a pretty awful implication. I'm not saying you can't connect the things, but you need to give context as to why you're doing that, and she doesn't. She just goes from, here's this one person who's trans without or believes themselves to be trans without dysphoria. I'm trying not to be argumentative of her point. Sorry, 1 second. Just want to say love and support. Sorry, this is going. Thank you, Tracy. She goes from that person who threatened her to me, who's making a similar stance, but doesn't mention her and actually has never in any social media platform until today ever talked about Blaire White at all. That, and giving no context as to why she's going from one to the other and just putting them back to back, that creates a very, at best, unfair, and I would argue, dangerous association. Because if you disagree with my stance that of having a trans identity without having dysphoria, and you contrast that or complement it or compare it or otherwise juxtapose it with someone with a similar identity who's threatening violence, you're implying a lot about me that that's not a fair thing to do. You're taking one person who is doing a vehemently abhorrent thing of threatening bodily harm, and another who, in the process of doing that, happens to express a certain point of view. And then you find someone else with that same point of view who is not expressing threats of bodily harm to anyone, and you're joining them together. You're making a comparison. You are linking them in the minds of your audience. And again, I have absolutely no way of knowing if this was done with intent or out of carelessness. Whether it was done with full knowledge of what was being implied, or if she just felt that because we held similar identities, might as well lump these two things together, and then didn't think it through what that meant. I don't know. I have no way of knowing, and I'm not going to presume. But it does make that link. It makes that connection between me and someone who threatened her life. And regardless of what point you're making, I have a big fundamental problem with anyone who does that. Whatever your political point is, even if you're making a point about transgenderism or anything else that I agree with, if you do that, I have a problem with that. So those are the two things that I felt the need to specifically take issue with, because I feel like I can address those things without getting into the substance of who's right and who's wrong. Because as I said, I would not be opposed and would even welcome a conversation with her, because the position that she holds, I have a lot of questions about. And I would prefer not to have to go through 150 videos to find the answers, especially, not being certain that they're even there. Given her position, there's a lot of questions that brings up for me. Things like her stance on non-binary people who experience dysphoria. Does she have an issue with them considering themselves trans, even though they have not transitioned into the opposing gender from male to female or female to male, but instead have transitioned to somewhere in the middle, but they still have dysphoria? Is she okay with them identifying as trans? I would be curious to know what terminology she would be okay with me identifying as, because if her stance is that I should not be calling myself trans, and again, I have an opposing viewpoint, I'd be happy to discuss that with her, but then what should I call myself? Because I don't think by any measure I have any business being called cis. Because as I've pointed out, I may not have transitioned into living full-time as a woman, but I have absolutely transitioned out of identifying and living as a man. That's long behind me at this point. So, where does that leave me? And the other thing is, a fair number of people who obviously saw her video commented things to the extent of, you're gender fluid, you're a transvestite, you're a crossdresser, call yourself these things. And I do call myself gender fluid. I think the argument is that, from my perspective, gender fluid is a form of trans. So I don't claim to be, to not be gender fluid. I think there's just a disagreement between myself and her as to whether or not that should be covered under the overall label of trans. And again, I'm not trying to have that debate here. But it's very interesting to me to see comments like that basically boil down to, just call yourself a crossdresser and everything will be fine. Except it won't be. And I know that from experience, because I did identify as a crossdresser for a very long time. And if these people had looked at earlier videos on that channel, they would have known that. But I still got very, 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 very harsh pushback from people with similar views to Blaire and what appear to be views of her audience, who would tell me that I was harming trans people basically by existing. So when she says, you're harming us by identifying as trans, just call yourself a cross-dresser, or she didn't say those exact words, so I don't mean to put words in her mouth, but when her subscribers and her followers say something to that extent, my first thought is, but I did identify as a cross-dresser, and I got just as much harsh pushback from similar sources back then. So the issue doesn't seem to be what I call myself. The issue seems to be my existence. The issue seems to be what they feel I'm not what I actually am. Sorry, Gabe, you scrolled away from me. Let me pull that up. I would think trans could be permanent or temporary. Trans is just moving from one to the other. Again, like I do understand the position that she holds. I don't agree with it, but I do understand it. And oddly enough, some of the people who came from her channel didn't seem to agree that trans was a thing either. Some of them, which was very strange to me. But I'm not going to keep this going too much longer because I am, oh God, I'm a sweaty mess. But here's the funny thing, and this is me wanting to end it on a little bit more of an upbeat note. So, her highlighting that video, I had the biggest subscriber bump that I'd had in 6 months, and the biggest view bump that I'd had in a year. And there were a heartwarmingly high number of comments on the video saying, hey, we support you, we love what you do. And what really was heartening to me is the vast majority of those weren't attacking Blaire. They were offering me consolation, which is what I needed, because I don't want or need people to attack another person on my behalf. Actually, I would say, please don't. But what did help was seeing people leaving comments saying, what you do matters, what you are is valid, and that was wonderful. So I wanted to wrap up on that note, because as weird as the last 24 hours have been, they could have been much, 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 much worse. And actually, I had kind of expected them to be a lot worse than they were. So, I mean, I suppose consider all that silver lining. "600 people, I am pretty sure that is a record for a live stream. Oh my goodness. I kind of wish I had more to say so I could keep it going, but I've said what I came to say. And I want to thank folks for listening. Oh my God, Tracy, thank you. I really want to thank my mods for keeping on top of this. I cannot imagine it was easy tonight with this many people, but thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. For those who support me in whatever way you do, whether it is with your money or with your words, I greatly appreciate it. And if you want to push back against what happened, thank you, Raven. Support from me is what I would ask for, instead of vitriol against Blaire. I don't want that, and I definitely don't want that done in my name. Oh, thank you, Gabe. People are people. So why should it be you and I get along so awfully? Well said. So I am going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for tuning in, hearing me out. And I want you to remember you are beautiful, you are valid, you are loved. You are the council. I just run the meeting. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night. Be safe.